We finally have albino bearded dragons in the US, but is that a good thing? What's up, YouTube? So, yeah, albino bearded dragons. Now, before we can go on about albino bearded dragons, I want everybody to know these albino bearded dragons are T+, so they don't have any adverse effects with UVB. That's what most people were thinking about. Oh, they're going to have problems with UVB because they're albino. T+ albinos do not have any problems with UVB, so we are perfectly fine on that front. So let's take all that out of the way before people are like, oh, we can't have albino bearded dragons. My problem with them is the same problem I have with red monsters. I still kind of have the same problem with red monsters, but it's a little better now. When a new morph is found, people will breed the crap out of it. And we, as breeders, should all be in this hobby to perfect or make better, not to make money. That comes with it. If you are a breeder and you're trying to perfect and to make things better, the money will come. However, if you're only trying to make money, the perfection and everything else goes out the window, and essentially the money will go away in the future because people are going to realize that your animals are not healthy. As a buyer, what does this mean for you? If you have the money to fork over for an albino bearded dragon, which right now is about $5,000, then go for it. However, just make sure that you're getting a bearded dragon that's from at least unrelated parents. As of right now, they've been out for a couple years. They should be unrelated parents at this point. Not unrelated as, completely far apart. They're still going to be very close together. They're going to be cousins, second cousin, third cousin, whatever the gist may be, but they're going to be unrelated in terms of brothers and sisters, moms and dads, or daughters and dads, sons and moms and stuff like that. Hopefully they're like that. If you are really trying to produce your own albinos, then obviously go for the hets because it's going to save you money in the long run. And there's going to be more to do with the hets because you can breed a het to a het, and about 25% of them will be visual albinos. You hold those, you breed them to something else, whether it be zeros, wiblets, reds, yellows, whatever it is, and essentially you can do more with it. Now, obviously, if you buy the albino to begin with, then you'll be able to do that even faster, but not as often unless you buy an albino male, which tend to be more expensive than the females because you can breed one male to several females, right? So, if that's the case, and you are buying hets, make sure they're unrelated. If you are buying an albino bearded dragon to outcross, there's no reason for it to be unrelated to anything because everything you have right now is probably not going to be related to that albino. Now, I will say one thing is that the het albinos that I have seen in the U.S., I don't want to throw anybody's name under the bus, but I have gotten, people have reached out saying, hey, this person has sold red monsters or has sold animals or blah, 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 and they have died within a short period of time. So, not saying that there's something wrong with that individual breeder, but I'm saying that there's something behind their breeding. Maybe they're not being, ethical. Maybe they're not outcrossing correctly. Who knows? But essentially, just make sure whoever you get your hets from, make sure you're getting them from somebody that you can trust. And also make sure they offer health guarantees because you don't want to be spending $2,000 to $5,000 on an animal with no health guarantees. With that said, if you are spending $2,000 to $5,000 on an animal, take it to the vet as soon as you get it. Check for ADV, check for respiratory, check for everything you can check for right then and there. It'll save you a lot of money in the long run because if something's wrong with that dragon right then and there, you can go back to the seller and say, hey, this is what I found out a couple days after, I received it. So that's just my FYI, my tidbits for anyone that's trying to buy a bearded dragon that's an albino or a het albino. Here we go. Here's my problem. I kind of already got to it. Is the relations, the relatives being bred together to create more albinos. If you are going the outcrossing route, perfect. Buy your $5,000 albino, breed it to a bunch of other things, create hets, and then, you know, buy another het later on in the future. Keep all the female hets, keep a couple female hets, buy a male that's a het albino or a visual albino later on. That'll be more further down the line instead of, you know, 100% related to the ones that you're keeping. Now, I know this is not a profit video. This is more so of just anyone that wants to know about bearded dragons. So this is what the only thing I really have to say. And I don't have any pictures because I don't have an albino, but or videos or anything like that. But I'll show the pictures of the person that I know that has albinos, which is Seed Idea, and I think it's Thailand, something like that. But they're out of Asia, and essentially they have a bunch of albinos that have been exporting to the U.S. There's a bunch of people with albinos in the U.S. now, but now they're being made for sale in terms of hets. So if you want to go get one, go get one. But listen to what I said. Get a vet to check it out, because you'd be surprised. All right, so there's no problem with the UVB on these albinos. I already covered that. Make sure you're getting something that's, you know, at least unrelated to what you're planning on buying. If you're buying two, make sure they're at least unrelated somehow. If you're buying a visual albino to outcross, great. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about with the albino video? So the reason I'm talking about outcrossing is, if you follow anything with red monsters have health problems. I'm not going to go through the list of health problems because there's a long list, and essentially it doesn't happen with every red monster, but it does happen, so you have to be careful with it. Now, because of red monsters being mostly line bred, and line breeding, I usually say line breeding is a couple generations, maybe 3 generations at most. After that, you should be outcrossing 100% of the time. However, with red monsters, there was several, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, who knows how many generations now of red monsters that are being line bred. So at that point, it's inbreeding, and there's a lot of people out there outcrossing red monsters too, but most of the people that are selling full red monsters, 100% red monsters, not all of them, but most of them are doing inbreeding. And how do you know if somebody's doing inbreeding? How do you know? Well, there's not going to be any, you know, sign saying, hey, this is an inbred red monster. You got to look for things. You got to look for the body structure. You got to look for the head structure. You got to look for, honestly, if you think about it, if you look at someone that's selling red monsters, right, and you're looking at it and you're like, well, you know, a clutch normally has on average 20. Let's say it's a small clutch and has like 10, right? But these people have like 40 breeders. And if there's 40 breeders and half of them, let's say, are females, that's 20 females. And if they are laying, you know, small clutches, 10, that should at least be, you know, how many is that? 200. That's 200 dragons that they should be selling that are full-blooded red monsters. Most of these breeders you're seeing, oh, well, here's like, you know, 50 red monsters a year. How are you only getting 50? That doesn't add up. Let's say it's only 100. Most of these people aren't selling red monsters like you would think, because where are the rest going? Are they not making it? Are they wholesaling them? Are they selling them to pet stores? What is going on with the red monsters? But that's not here or there. This is about albinos. But essentially the same thing's probably going to happen to albinos if the wrong people get their hands on it. And if the wrong people do get their hands on it, then just know that for a fact, we're going to go through the same problems as we did with red monsters, as we have with the albino, as we are going to have with the albinos if they do the exact same thing they did with red monsters. You should be, if you are a person that bought albinos, you should be 100% outcrossing right now for 2 generations. The person in Asia that started breeding albinos, essentially they're inbreeding. They're doing a lot of inbreeding over there, right? They're doing 0 to 0. They're doing wiblets to wiblets. They're doing red monsters to red monster. They do not care over there. Everything is for profit. I'm not saying that there's something wrong. That's just their standards over there. Our standards over here are a little bit more strict because we are, you know, in Asia they have, you know, a handful of breeders. Here everybody's a breeder. So that's the problem. Everybody's a breeder. Everybody wants to do the breeding. That means there's not a lot of outcrossing taking place, because if everybody wants to do the breeding and everything's coming from the same bloodline, then essentially by the time you get to you know, 2 or 3 people down the road, everything's still going to be related. There's not going to be any outcrossing that's going to be done, because if Joe Dirt buys 2 albinos and breeds them together, and they're related to Joe Blow's 2 albinos that he's breeding together, and they're related to Jane Doe, who has 2 albinos that she's breeding together, all 6 of these albinos are all related, and they're all creating albinos that is just piping out, and then like a couple years later, somebody bought some from Joe Dirt, somebody bought some from Jane Doe, they start breeding together. Guess what? They're still related. Somebody already did that. We should be outcrossing right now. We should be doing het to het mostly as of right now, just to make sure that the bloodline is sacred, make sure that everything is going to be okay with the offspring. After a couple generations, then we can start doing, you know, start testing the waters on visual to het again, and then if we'll see how that goes for a couple generations, and then if everything's going okay, then we can start doing albino to albino. But if I know anything from the past, if you look at translucent, when I first started out with translucent, you couldn't even find a translucent for real that was bred from a visual to het. Every translucent that you saw on the market was het to het, 100%. I had some translucents that were het to het, and they had problems. That's back then, 12, 13 years ago. Now you can find translucents that are from visual to het that have problems. So people should, honestly, I do a lot of het to visual, but I also look for structure. I look for outcrossing in the bloodline. I do some outcrossing myself to make sure that this is not just being het to visual, het to visual, het to visual for the entire bloodline. I want to break it up and outcross it a little bit here and there just to make sure. I also breed het to het. I mean, you have to sometimes. So you don't get 100% hets all the time. Sometimes you get 66% hets. Now this year and last year I didn't do that, but next year I have probably, as of right now, I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 visual translucents in my entire collection right now. 6 visual translucents. I have sold most of them. I noticed that this year, a lot of the translucent babies that I had were turning into incomplete translucents. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Enough for me to question what's going on. Now, incomplete translucent is really just an anomaly, but why is it happening? And it just started raining outside, and I got to go back inside, so I'm going to cut this video short. But why is it happening? So I essentially said, you know what? I'm going to try to strengthen the bloodline a little bit more, and I'm going to eliminate a lot of the visual translucents that I have, and I'm going to try het to het for a little bit. And essentially what I said, you do visual to het. If it doesn't work, then go back to het to het. If it does work, you know, keep doing visual to het. But every once in a while, we have to outcross as breeders to make sure that our bloodlines do not get tainted, to make sure that our bloodlines are sacred and nothing else is wrong with the entire bloodline. Because like I said, everyone's a breeder. If everyone gets a dragon from someone that is selling them and pumping them out, and they're all related and they try to breed them, essentially it's just inbreeding happening across the entire globe, and we don't need that. Raining hard. Woo! Alright, y'all. I don't know how long this video was. Oh, it was pretty long, actually. I didn't realize I was talking that long. So, with all that said, make sure that you are outcrossing if you are a breeder. Make sure that if you are buying a albino, or if you're buying a het albino, that you at least get it vet checked, because you never know what's going to be wrong with that animal. And especially right now when you're spending $2,000 to $5,000 for that animal, you need to know at least that it's clean bill of health. Because who wants to spend $2,000 on something and then, hey, it has ADV, or hey, it came with a respiratory infection? No, I want something with a clean slate that if it does get sick, it's on me. But I don't want something that as soon as it gets here is already sick and I have to deal with a $2,000 mistake, right? So, woo, it just keeps coming. Well, if you made it this far into the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything that I put out in the future. As always, peace.